Let's recap Week 15 next on Fantasy Football Today in 5. Welcome to FFT in 5. I'm Chris Towers. I'm here with Adam Azer. And we're almost through Week 15, and most of my fantasy leagues are now done.
Oh, no.
I made the playoffs in 9 leagues. I think I'm going to move on in 3 of them. So,
okay.
Not a great day for me, and I'm a little bummed out about that. But I guess that, there's some good news in that at least on Sunday, we didn't have any significant injuries that we have to talk about. We had a bunch of guys leave games briefly. Brock Purdy and Christian McCaffrey on consecutive plays, but both came back and had great games, frankly. Travis Kelce left the game. Jalen Waddle left the game. Trey McBride left the game, but they all came back. Will Levis, Hunter Henry, and Jaden Reed and Zach Wilson did not. So we'll see what their Week 16 statuses are, but none of those guys really matter too much. Unfortunately, we did have some big injuries on Saturday. That was Jamar Chase leaving with a separated shoulder. It's an AC joint sprain. They say he's day-to-day. The problem is the Bengals don't have the extra day to recover. They do play on Saturday again this week, so he's not going to get that extra day, so that's going to make it a little more difficult for him to get back. And then Michael Pittman and Zach Moss both also left Saturday's games. They do have the extra day, so hopefully they'll be okay for Week 16, but obviously, as we speak on Sunday night, very much up in the air, and I think Trey Sermon is going to be one of the top waiver wire targets for Week 16 if Zach Moss is out, right, Adam?
Yeah, I suppose so, facing Pittsburgh, but there is definitely a chance that Jonathan Taylor plays next week,
yes.
So we have to keep that in mind. Having said that, I don't know that there's a great waiver wire guy out there in our leagues. You could look
at Ty Chandler, 75% rostered.
Yeah, Chandler, Noah Brown, 70% rostered in ESPN leagues and Yahoo leagues. They're going to be more like 50% rostered. So I think those are good options. I think Darren Waller's a decent option if you need a tight end at Philadelphia. Decent option. I don't think he's great or anything like that, but look, you can't. It's not like Sermon was getting every carry.
Yeah.
But you could get Moss or Taylor back this week. So if you have to make that decision on Tuesday, it could be kind of dicey.
Yeah, it's not a spend whatever you have left in fab situation, but we also hopefully won't have any significant injuries that we have to fill for Week 15. So, fingers crossed that we can get through these last game and a half that we're waiting on as we speak. But let's move on to winners and losers. Make sure you listen to the full episode of Fantasy Football Today, recorded on Sunday night, for a more in-depth breakdown of Week 15 with Adam and the FFT gang. But I'm going to go with, as my biggest winner for this one, I mean, it's sort of tongue-in-cheek, but it's kind of all the wide receivers who let you down all season leading into this. I mean, Chris Godwin had a massive game. Jalen Waddle, he wasn't as bad as Chris Godwin coming in, but had a massive game as well. Jordan Addison was huge on Saturday. So just nice to see whether, those guys helped you out. T. Higgins also had a big game. Whether those guys, whether your season was already over, it was at least nice to get some good vibes from some of the more disappointing guys. And a lot of those wide receiver twos in offenses that we were hoping would have bigger seasons. Adam, who are your winners for Week 15?
I think you look at a couple guys who are, I think, really running away from the backfield committees in Devin Singletary and Chuba Hubbard. And in terms of workload, I think I feel a little bit more confident in Chuba Hubbard's workload, but I like Devin Singletary more. Singletary gets Cleveland next week, and Hubbard gets the Packers next week. So I'd rather start Singletary, but these are guys that you could look at if you really need someone. And we could talk about my loser running backs if you want to pivot to one of those wins. I just want to say that the Colts are not playing the Steelers. They just played the Steelers. They're playing the Falcons next week. Yes. And I was talking about Trey Sermon. But yeah, my loser running backs are Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, and Breece Hall. And I still think I'm going to start them over Singletary and Hubbard. But Barkley concerns me a lot. I don't know that we've really talked so much about him, but he had a 20-carry game last week in a win over the Packers. But for the most part, he's 12 or 13 carries now with a very inconsistent role in the passing game with DeVito. He's not running the ball all that well. And they got the Eagles next week, and we'll see what the Eagles do on Monday night. But that's been a pretty damn tough run defense, and it could be an absolute blowout. So that's the one who scares me the most. I think Breece Hall can get right back on it with a whole bunch of targets. But he's not a slam dunk, even with all the targets, in my opinion, because he's just not running the ball well, and he's unlikely to score. And then Bijan, I think I have the most confidence in next week. He's been frustrating because we took him, third overall. But if he had been a third round pick or something like that, we probably wouldn't be complaining about Bijan Robinson. So I'll go back to him next week. But it was certainly disappointing. You waited your whole damn season for Bijan against the Panthers, and he had 0.4 fantasy points in full PPR. It's one of the biggest disappointments of the year without question.
And we had Tyler Algier early on out-snapping, or not out-snapping. It was Bijan still had more than 50% of the snaps. It was his lowest snap share of the season outside of the headache game. And just weird uses. I'm just going to, I don't want to dance on anyone's proverbial grave here, but Arthur Smith, I think this has to be it, right? Like, the Falcons are 2 games under 500. They've had, I think, one win in his tenure by more than 14 points. They just lost to a team that looked completely hopeless before this game, and they lost 9-7 with 3 field goals given up to the Panthers, so they couldn't outproduce that. And it's just, they've got to go with a different coach next year, right? And hopefully, I mean, this was kind of, if that's the case, maybe one last FU to the fantasy community that Arthur Smith seems to despise so much, because we had horrible Bijan Robinson game. Not even a good Tyler Algier game, frankly. I had to start him in one league. Terrible Drake London game. Terrible Kyle Pitts game. It's just
terrible weather, though. I will say
terrible weather. That's true. But hopefully the Falcons replace Arthur Smith. Hopefully they actually attempt to upgrade the quarterback spot this offseason, because it's just,
that's a bigger issue to me, Chris.
Yeah.
Bad quarterback play. I don't think Ritter's terrible or anything, but they're not terrible as a team. But most teams are pretty much go as their quarterbacks go. They don't have enough talent to overcome that. He might be a good coach if he had a great quarterback. I don't know. I actually feel like they've kind of overachieved. I know he's frustrating as hell, but I feel like they're in contention. They're not a very good roster, in my opinion. So I get it. I get the frustration with Arthur Smith, but there was the report that barring some type of collapse, he was going to come back.
Well,
losing to the Panthers might be the start of it.
Yeah, 9-7 loss to the Panthers might be the start of a collapse. And that's going to do it for FFT and 5. We'll see you tomorrow.